International contact and exchange can make a telling difference to any school. It can be seen in displays along the corridor, in extra resources that come into the classroom,
activation it's called,
in new subjects that enter the curriculum. It can be noticeable in the greater awareness of pupils.
We are really a multicultural country, new dances, new languages.
And perceptible in the added vibrancy of a school day. But there are other changes, ones not so immediate and not so obvious, but still equally profound in their effect on the school. These are changes in the outlook of teachers and the style of school leadership. We'll be visiting schools where new directions are being taken because head teachers and teachers are being influenced and inspired by an international partnership project called Connecting Classrooms, run by the British Council. In the case of this head teacher, we'll be hearing how his whole career is taking a completely different turn as a result of his international experience. We'll also be following this principal to find out how his encounters in other countries have affected him as leader of Longsands Community College at St Neots in Cambridgeshire.
It had enormous impact. I know it did, and I know it intuitively. Actually spelling out why and how is actually quite challenging because I think there's still part of me that's processing the experience 3 years on from when it first started.
Robert has made 3 visits to Mexico, where he was involved in detailed discussions about leadership with other head teachers, as well as regional and national administrators and politicians. He's also experienced Mexican school life in the region of Baja California Sur. His assembly theme this morning, however, is about a more recent visit he's made to China, where he spoke at a head teachers' conference.
You started to actually realise that the world over, there are some things that we have in common. The hopes that people have, the fears they have, the anxieties. I have learnt so much from these experiences that first I want to share my learning with the students, which I think is legitimate in itself, but I also want to inspire them with the wish to learn more about other countries themselves.
South Dartmoor Community College in Ashburton is making connections in Brazil, adding to the links it's already established in Thailand. The principals made 2 transatlantic visits to discuss leadership with other head teachers in Brazil, and is now developing a partnership with one school in the city of Recife.
We enjoy having the opportunity to have a classroom link now as well as a leadership link. I think they're both very separate but both very powerful for us. Our aim, our aspiration is to have a link with a school in every continent.
Ray recognises that international contacts not only provide fresh insights into other cultures, but also give members of his staff opportunities to take on new and challenging responsibilities. When it came to Brazil, the chance was handed to a teacher in the technology department.
I've had to project manage something, not just taking into account my timetable and what I want to achieve in a lesson and what I want to achieve out of a project in a very selfish, teachery sort of way, but also I've had to take into account what someone else wants to get out of a project and what they can achieve in a timescale and what's realistic for them, which doesn't always happen in a teacher's world necessarily, because they're very focused on their own classroom environment.
And those others, are they here or in Brazil or both?
Both. In the needs of my students, they need to understand what's going on. It's not just about me as a teacher following through this project. The students, because it's very much a student-led project, they've had a big say on how this project's taken shape, really.
Pupils have been exchanging information on lifestyle and also swapping ideas for designs to be used in a joint lesson via video link on casting and glazing. There's also been an important sharing of school policies, which has led to a radical shift in self-evaluation in both countries. South Dartmoor has been developing other, more informal ways of encouraging teachers to think about their teaching. Teachers are asked to watch their colleagues at work. It's an approach that appeals to teachers in Brazil, where they're unused to formal observation.
I wanted them to take a different role entirely and to become learners rather than judges when they go into the room. So we've asked all of our staff to do 3 learning observations during the course of every year.
Very good.
They watch some aspect of the work that they've been invited to view.
You get an idea of if someone observes you, they can see if you're doing things well, and being able to observe somebody else and talk informally about the advantages of them being in the classroom and what they saw and any points that they think were really good, and in an informal atmosphere.
The Brazilian school, meanwhile, takes one approach rarely adopted in Britain, asking pupils to comment on their teachers. It's led to South Dartmoor students being involved in evaluating their teachers and producing reports on their performance.
We tried this 3 years ago before my Brazilian experience and it did not work at all. It is a very controversial policy and we dropped it quickly. But having gone to Brazil and the Brazilians having been here and having been able to say, look, you know, these sorts of things can be done in these sorts of ways and they're not controversial, they're not threatening, we've managed to get them introduced.
Back in Cambridgeshire, it's nearly time for a meeting of the St Neots Forum, which brings together local public services. Today's meeting is in a newly opened primary school.
My sergeant gave a knife talk to St Neots College.
I mean, for us, that would fit perfectly into assembly slots.
The community alcohol partnership that started last year is the police working with trading standards.
I've learnt a lot about working with other agencies. Some of the schools in Mexico work very, very closely with their local authority and with the police and indeed with parents, much more closely than perhaps we do. So throughout the world...
Back at school and back in front of a Year 10 Spanish class. He doesn't speak the language, but he does know quite a lot of people who do.
OK, so this is me in a secondary school in La Paz. While I was there that day, Mexican schools always do when they have visitors. They're really big on putting on shows of various kinds. It is about talking to the pupils how other cultures think and feel differently. And I think that just broadens people's mental horizons and makes them more open to the suggestion of different ways of doing things. I tell them that I learnt a lot about what it means to respect other cultures. For me personally, and so it was very good for me, I think, to go through that process of encountering very different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things, and not leaping to judgment. For example, response to issues like national pride. When you go to Mexico, they're immensely proud of their nationhood, because I think for them it's something that's come much more recently in their history. And those things prompt a lot of quite interesting thoughts about what our priorities should be. And have we, in some ways, lost something because we don't celebrate our national days? We don't have a flag ceremony.
West Drayton Primary in West London is creating a strong partnership with a school in Brazil. And the link is acting as a catalyst for the schools to review their self-evaluation policies.
And how are you settling in? All right.
The head regularly visits classes as part of an evaluation strategy he calls appreciative inquiry, which he believes Brazilian teachers will find more attractive and less threatening.
My approach is to invite each teacher to choose something that they're doing which is creative and original and can be in any aspect of the curriculum. And I will come in and they will try and enlighten me as to the approach they're taking so that I can then try and share it with others. Because the best way, in my view, for many of our teachers to make progress is to learn from one another.
So you challenge them to find something new and exciting in their teaching?
Yes, and the new and the exciting can be in any aspect of the work that we undertake. We do a lot of work on social and emotional development, for example, and teachers are very creative in thinking of things in that area.
There have been 2 visits so far to the partner school in São Paulo. How the relationship develops is being steered by members of staff, especially language teachers and assistants.
You speak Brazilian Portuguese, I speak Portuguese. Do you have a preference?
Certainly.
In this? Well,
yes, I have a major preference.
Right, so, but I mean, is that going to be a problem? Because...
Just as important, however, are the ideas of the pupils.
How can we help them with understanding some of what we've sent, because their English isn't absolutely brilliant.
We could like videotape some of us showing them around our school and getting to know them better.
That's a brilliant idea. What would you like to use?
Video conference.
Video conference. OK, what language would they speak in, do you think?
Common English.
Yes, or?
Portuguese. We could try to learn some Portuguese words in our spelling group so that we can understand what they're trying to tell
That's
us.
good. Which languages do you already speak?
I speak French, Tamil, a little Hindi, and another language called Kannada from the south part of India.
Oh, I see.
At Long Sands Community College, it's time for the principal's walkabout, a regular but always unscheduled part of his day. The pressures on his time are still the same, but his international experience is changing his attitudes and the outlook of the school.
It made me think very carefully about what I actually do here, what the balance of my time is spent on. It's certainly influenced what is in our college improvement plan, and it's certainly influenced some of the strategic priorities of the college. Through the internationalism, through the belief that we do affect each other globally, through the belief that connecting classrooms means that students gain a better understanding of each other.
Auckland's junior school in Eastbourne has developed links for every year group across 4 continents. Our filming coincided with a visit from staff from our partner school in Egypt. Head teacher Mark Trott uses his experience to advise and support schools looking beyond Britain for the first time. He encourages all schools to recognise that young people should be prepared to live and work as part of a global society.
The British Council and the whole Connecting Classrooms project is a really important part. There's a huge wealth of experience there. There's grants available, there's ideas, all sorts of things. So that's the place to start, really. I think we've noticed a big difference in children's attitudes and values. I think they understand better the world they live in. They understand more about the people around the world and how they live their lives. And I think understanding is the first step to getting on with people. I think you've got to be very clear what you want out of the link. I think you've got to realise there's a bit of work involved. I think you've got to choose the link school wisely. You need the head teacher on board in that link school. That's a key point.
Connecting classrooms with other countries and continents can have a far-reaching impact on a school, and it can make something of a difference to a head teacher. West Drayton Primary's link with São Paulo motivated the head teacher to become fluent in Brazilian Portuguese, with help from parents and 2 play assistants who originate from Brazil. But learning the language and studying the culture has now encouraged him to retire from school life and start a new one devoted more to Brazil and Latin America.
I in fact signed up to do an MA in Portuguese and Brazilian studies, so who knows how it will end up.
So it's been life-changing, really?
I think, well, for me it has. It's been a revelation, without getting too serious about it, that there are sides to our own adult learning that we can neglect unless we have a chance to discover something about ourselves. And certainly this engagement with Brazil and through the parents of children who are Brazilian in this school has had a massive impact.